feels really nice, really good, and I can't wait to get it out on track. Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and today I'd like to take a look at rebuilding the gearbox on this Koisho Phaser and also re-oiling the motor while we're in there. So just a bit of service and support for getting these cars going maximum. Now whether you're trying to get the most performance out of it or just keep it reliable, let's jump right in and have a look. Okay, I'm going to just zoom in on here. Okay, all right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to start by taking the motor cover off, and you'll notice here I've got my little parts tray. That's going to help me keep all the screws organized. You can see here I am in fact just doing it by hand and not using a power tool of any kind. Yeah, I just like to do things by feel, if you will. Okay. And we've got a couple of compartments here, so I'll organise the screws in a way in which I remember, because there will be different lengths, different fixtures and fittings on this. Great quality plastics on these Phasers. For a entry-level or spec racing machine, they are really good value and very reliable. And boy, do they take a hit. Okay. Got these out. Now that should reveal my motor like so. You can see in there that it's actually quite clean. There's not a lot of dirt and debris. I won't oil the motor now. We'll leave that to the last bit. I'll keep going ahead. I've got quite a nice mesh in there. Got the factory steel pinion. Okay, so now I'm going to work on getting the gearbox cover off of the rear. And that's going to expose the rear diff and drivetrain so I can re-lube it and service it to make sure that it's running at its best and staying reliable. So I'm going to start, just take these bottom shock mounts off like so. There's not too many screws you have to do on these cars. Keeping note of which position the shock absorbers are coming out of on the arms, which is the outer hole on this current setup. Then we can go ahead and I'll take my camber, my upper suspension arm off, my camber link if you will. Getting these really good long beefy screws like so. You can see there the wheel just dropped down. Can leave that assembly right there like that. Same on the left side. Then we should just have two more screws. Take the whole rear end of the car apart. Really good quality plastics on these. Just like so. Pull that down there like that. A couple of screws here. Let's get this gearbox out. Okay, one thing I love about these cars is their simplicity and ease of working on and serviceability, that they do come apart really easily. Okay, so I've got the whole gearbox case off as one unit here, and you can see here that it does have factory assembled lubricant in there. This car hasn't done a great deal of work by the looks of it, but it does pay to service it up anyway. So I've just got a rag here, and I'm going to wipe all the old grease out of the way, and I'm going to be replacing it with a new spec grease. I'm going to be using a copper grease in there, as this does use metal to metal drivetrain. So on the pinion and the bevel gear, just like so. Wipe all that out, get a beautiful clean case. Then we can go ahead and lift the rear diff out like so. Nice and smooth in operation, but we will re-lube it. And again, I'm going to take the whole spur and drive shaft assembly out. just to ensure that we can clean it, re-lube it and put it back in. Sit this here. Okay, now we do the cleaning. Like so. Now we can see that that's all nice and clean, and I'll go ahead here, clean the spur. I'm actually going to lubricate the bearings while I'm here, so I've got some Aramax bearing oil, and it pays just to lubricate these every so often. Nice good quality oil lube. Get that in the ball bearing. These cars are fully ball raced out of the factory, so that really does make them very reliable and fast too, somewhat. Okay, I'll just work that oil in a bit. You can see that it is just a cast aluminium gear, but it's not showing any signs of wear. Really good condition. And yeah, with the power that we're putting through it, should be really good. Okay, so I've got a little bit of lithium grease or ceramic grease here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply that with. I've got my hobby knife here. Just going to put a little bit of grease inside the center drive shaft coupling, like so. We don't want to absolutely pack it with grease, but we want it to be nice and lubricated, so it doesn't wear, and B, it moves nice and smoothly, not much friction. I'll go ahead now and I'll put this gear back on with the pin, and we'll drop that back in to the case like so, to the gear case. That's all sitting pretty, like so. Now, what we can actually do is put the car to the side for a minute while we work on rebuilding the diff assembly. So, a lot of people are scared by these. The beautiful thing about these things is that they're not an oil-filled diff assembly like we use in some of our other competition cars, whether it's off-road or on-road. They're what we call an open diff. So they're not full in a bathtub of oil, but they are at the same time lubricated. So I can see here I've got beautiful metal gear. They're really good condition. So I'm just going to get my 2mm and go ahead and take this diff apart. Now I'm doing this here over a nice clean work surface, so I don't introduce any more dirt or grit into the assembly that I'm actually trying to service. Like so. Now you don't need a whole lot of space to do something like this. It's not something you really want to be doing trackside if you can avoid it, but that's why we service them in between race meets. You should never have a failure at the track. Okay, got those 4 screws out, get them to the side. Go ahead here and separate the diff. Yep, just what I was expecting. So we've got a plastic case with metal gears in there, and I'm expecting to see, yep, a bit of black will flick out the bottom gear like so, and then I should be able to get my pliers in there. We'll get this pin out like so. Get the out drive out. We'll get this bearing off of the diff case, and there we have it. I'll take this washer out if I can. It's actually part of the diff case in there. It's molded in. Let's have a look. That can sit in there anyway. The main thing why I'm taking the out drive out of the diff assembly is so I can get lubrication up into the casing from the back. So I've just taken one side off at a time to make sure I don't confuse anything. And on this section here, it's metal to plastic, I use a bit of white grease again, keep it all nice and smooth. Ensure that where the outdrive comes through, the diff casing itself is actually lubricated. I'll take the opportunity, since the bearing's off, to re-lubricate it with a bit of bearing oil.